Today's video is sponsored by Arc System Works. With the holiday season approaching, this means that Black Friday is just around the corner. If you're like me, then you'll be using this time to get some new games, and thankfully, Arc System Works has got you covered. You may have heard of Arc System Works before. They're the developers behind some of the most acclaimed anime-style fighting games on the market, such as the legendary Guilty Gear Strive, Dragon Ball FighterZ, and even the Persona 4 Arena series. Well, guess what? This Black Friday, they're going to be hosting a sale on their massive catalog. Get yourself some great games at even better prices, like BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle and Chaos Code: New Sign of Catastrophe. Maybe even consider picking up something for a friend or loved one. It is the Christmas season after all. And if you enjoyed what you played, maybe consider pre-ordering the upcoming Under Night, In Birth Sis Celis. You'll get a free season pass as a bonus if you do. If you're at all interested, click the link in the description to get started. But act quickly, since this sale is going on from now until November 27th. Once again, major thanks to Arc System Works for sponsoring today's video. So back when Persona 3 Reload was first announced, I made a video covering my thoughts and expectations surrounding the project. At the time of making it, there wasn't really a whole lot to discuss, so that video mostly served to capture my raw emotions surrounding the project. However, since then, plenty of more info and trailers have dropped, enough so that we can paint a much better picture as to what this remake will actually be like. My initial video is pretty outdated at this point, so I figured I may as well give my updated thoughts on the more recent content surrounding this game. Don't worry, I won't make this a habit. I'm not about to start doing weekly Persona 3 news recaps or anything, because there are plenty of people that already do that much better than I ever could. This is the first time since, I want to say, Persona 5 when I've been legitimately this excited for an Atlus game to come out. Oh, and I don't mean Persona 5 Royal, I mean Persona 5. In case you need a reminder, that game came out in the West all the way back in April of 2017. So yeah, it's safe to say it's been quite a while since then. It's not that I haven't cared about Atlus's more recent output, but there hasn't been anything that's truly captured my attention as much as Reload has. Believe it or not, Persona 3 is a pretty significant game to me, despite it not being my favorite Persona game. It's the game that basically kickstarted my career and has led me down to the path where I am today. So yeah, I do kinda care about this game's legacy, and how this remake is gonna impact how people perceive it. Regardless of Atlus's intentions, Persona 3 Reload is gonna be a lot of people's first time experiencing this story and world. The last thing I want is for this absolute classic to be tainted by a remake of way lesser quality. Not to show my gray hairs too much, but I was a part of that camp that thought this game never really needed a remake. Call me old-fashioned all you want, but there was nothing that I found to be particularly wrong with the original version of this game. But I guess PS2 games are just too outdated for some people. Since there isn't really much I can do to stop this remake from happening, I've just been trying to keep an open mind about this one. I've been looking at Persona 3 Reload less as a replacement for the original game, and more so as a companion piece. It's this mindset that's allowed me to stay more optimistic than I otherwise would have, because longtime viewers are well aware about how I usually feel about this stuff. I know that this was a bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to give a bit of context as to where I stand on the idea of a remake. But with all that said, it's safe to say that I'm pretty happy with what we've seen of the game so far, but I'd be lying if I didn't acknowledge that there were some concerns lingering in the back of my mind. A lot of new information about this remake has surfaced since my original video covering the announcement trailer. We've got to see a good chunk of gameplay, the English voice cast has been revealed, and for the past few months, we've been getting a consistent string of trailers. The marketing is in full swing, and because of this, there's a lot to dissect and get excited for. However, there's still a part of me that feels a little skeptical about all this. I don't know, this game just looks a little too good to be true. There's gotta be some fucked up Final Fantasy VII Remake tier change hiding in there somewhere we just don't know about yet. But I guess it wouldn't be the first time a Persona 3 re-release did something like that, huh? Out of all the changes we've seen so far, I think the alterations to the general gameplay of Reload is what's got fans the most excited. Before the prospect of a Persona 3 remake was even a thing, one of the largest complaints about the original game was the dungeon crawling portion. Tartarus having pretty simple generations and the mandated use of AI-controlled party members makes Persona 3 an acquired taste, that's for sure. But after doing a couple of playthroughs of this game, I've really come to appreciate the unique qualities Persona 3 has compared to the rest of the series. Flawed for sure, but it's nothing that I feel as though needed to see a major overhaul. However, I'm clearly in the minority with this one, since P3R is attempting to appeal to the more recent fans, with core mechanics taken right from Persona 5. And you know what? I've got nothing wrong with this in theory. Persona 5 has the strongest core mechanics in the series. It strikes the perfect balance in terms of elemental variety, and Baton Pass adds some much needed complexity to the gameplay. I'm more than okay with these systems being implemented into Reload, but what I'm really afraid of is seeing some of Persona 5's crappy design rear its ugly head. For as polished as Persona 5's core systems are, the game is baby easy. Royal especially suffers from a lack of meaningful challenge. There's part of me that's afraid that Atlus is going to go out of their way to craft an experience similar to Royal when it comes to the combat difficulty. It's a little too early to tell whether or not the game is going to be well balanced, so I don't want to make any drastic calls. Though I will say that Theurgy attacks are rubbing me the wrong way. Theurgy attacks are a character's unique special attack that they can perform once they fill up a meter. They're kind of like limit breaks, and from what I've seen of them so far, I can't quite say I'm a fan. It's a very typical RPG feature, and from what I've gathered from the trailers, they seem to be super overpowered. What I'm concerned about is how strong they'll be against bosses. Like, I can imagine some of the Tartarus fights being completely trivialized through these, which wouldn't be very satisfying. What sounds better, demolishing an enemy through good strategy and building the right team, or winning because you just went into a fight and spammed limit breaks? Also, can't quite say I'm a huge fan of fusion spells being locked behind this. I vastly prefer the way Fess handled the system, where you need to meet specific requirements. Plus, having it be a more readily accessible tool in your arsenal instead of a one-off special move makes it much more involving. I can at the very least say it seems better than what Portable ended up going with, where fusion spells were consumable items. Apparently, every character will have a unique method of charging their Theurgy attack, which corresponds with their personality traits. Party members also have unique abilities not too different from persona traits from P5R. From what I'm hearing, all signs are pointing to Reload taking more than its share of influence from Persona 5 Royal, and while it will no doubt make a lot of players happy, I'm a little concerned with how much influence it's taking from P5. Persona 5 is a really good game, don't get me wrong, but I don't like the idea of it being the end-all be-all for the Persona series. I like every game in this franchise having their own distinct style and flair, and there's part of me that fears that Persona 3 is being retroactively shapen to fit in with Atlus's most popular game. I don't mind some inspiration being taken from P5, but I don't want that to overshadow the stuff that makes Persona 3 unique. And so far, it sorta seems that way. The tactics system has been completely gutted, the tiredness mechanic was removed, and most disappointing to me, it doesn't look like the main character can use multiple weapon types. Now this is one of the more unsung features of Persona 3 that only real nerds like myself care about. Different weapon types were more than just an aesthetic thing, since each class of weapon handled differently than others. They all had different stats, stumble rate, and the overworld attack animations had different windups. Different weapon types added a fun layer of personalization to Persona 3, and seeing this feature dropped in every version post-Fess is pretty lame. Part of me is holding out hope that this feature makes it into the game in some form. They did say that the new hangout events for the party members will unlock new abilities in combat, so it could be tied behind that. Like, how sick would it be if by spending time with a party member, they show you the ropes and you unlock the ability to equip their weapon type? Though, if this feature was still in the game, then I think we would have heard about it at this point. Speaking of those hangouts, the new nighttime activities are simultaneously what I'm looking forward to seeing the most, but are also what I'm the most fearful of. Persona 3 Reload is looking to expand the characters beyond the scope of the original game, while also giving the player something to do during the nighttime. Supposedly, these limited time events are going to act similarly to social links, in the sense that they'll have ongoing stories. But what blows my mind is that not only are these available for the party members, but according to some screenshots, Takaya is a character you can spend time with. I'm all for learning more about these characters, and I'm especially interested in what they're going to do with Strega. They were always some of the more underutilized antagonists, so I'd love to see their goals and motivations fleshed out a bit more. However, the thing that I'm a bit worried about is the characterization. A mistake I made in my original Persona 3 Reload video was making the assumption that the team behind this remake was the same that made the original. It turns out this isn't true. While it's still being made by P Studio, the staff working on this game is made up of entirely new people, which has me just a little worried. I'm sure the new hires working on this game are talented folks and are fans of the original, but going off past experiences with Mega 10 re-releases, I can't quite say I have a whole lot of confidence that this new content is going to be of the greatest quality. Unless the writers do a bunch of homework, I can imagine the new story content feeling very jarring compared to the rest of the game, which seems to be heavily basing its script off of the original release. In a worst case scenario, this will be another case of Persona Q writing, where characters are boiled down to one-note traits. However, since this is more so bonus content, I think I can let some fan service slide, as long as it's in service of something deeper, though I'm not holding my breath on that. At the end of the day, while I can't say I'm looking forward to Persona 3 Reload, I'm trying to keep my expectations in check, and I wouldn't be surprised if that allows me to enjoy it more than I otherwise would have. As someone who is fairly active within the Persona community, I've gotten to see the general consensus surrounding this game shape in more firsthand. And let me just say that some people are expecting far too much from this remake. Before Reload was even announced, there were 3 separate versions of Persona 3, all of which have their own exclusive content to set them apart. While it would have been nice for Reload to include content like the answer and the female protagonist from Portable, that always sounded like a bit of a pipe dream to me. Like, these aren't just small additions to the game. The answer on its own is a nearly 20-hour long epilogue from the original story. Plus it's bad, so I don't even know why you'd want it. But it does suck that we are losing out on the FemC. Her exclusive content is honestly better than what the normal route has to offer in most cases, and part of me hoped that it was going to be implemented into Reload in some way, but unfortunately that's not the case. It sort of makes sense, I guess, given that Atlus ported P3P to modern platforms earlier this year. While it sucks that we are losing out on some of this content, I think completely boycotting this remake because of it is a little too reactionary. Like, I get that it's disappointing to see, but from the looks of it, there's a lot of work being done to the main campaign to more to make up for it. This was never going to be some super ultimate Persona 3 that has literally every piece of content from the games and movies included, and having expectations like that is a little unreasonable. It's alright to be disappointed at some of the reveals, but completely dunking on something just because it doesn't reach your hyper-specific standards is a little silly, and that's coming from me of all people. To give a brief summary of my thoughts, I'm looking forward to Persona 3 Reload. However, it's not without any skepticism. As excited as I am to try this game when it comes out, there's always going to be a part of me that fears for the worst. I've just been burned a bit too many times with this whole re-release shtick, and while Reload does look to be pretty impressive on the whole, I still have some doubts. The last thing I want is for someone's first experience with Persona 3 is to be with a bad version of the game, right? It's why I was so harsh on the Persona 3 Portable remaster. That version tainted a lot of people's experience with the game, and while Reload has the chance to make up for that, it's gonna be a bit hard to completely forget about it. However, at the end of the day, it's all about perspective. To me, Persona 3 Reload is never going to be a replacement for the original game. Rather, I'm always going to view it as another way to experience it. And with that mindset taken into consideration, I'm more than willing to give this new version of P3 a chance, and allow it to stand on its own merits. However, it's up to Atlus to prove to us that this game is worthy of the title.